And now I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Microsoft Excel 1 Data Analysis Fundamentals. I'm going to hand things over to our featured presenter today. He is no stranger to presenting webinars for us and a New Horizons instructor, Mike Martin. Mike, you now have the floor.
Hey, thank you so much, Mayanne. Hi, everybody. As you know, Mayanne just mentioned, my name is Mike, and I will be the facilitator for today's training. And also, Mayanne said, hey, this is just a small portion of what we do in real life as a training company, and our training is more hands-on. So this is more of a show and tell. I'm going to go through some materials, and you can follow along, you can take notes, and just absorb the information. That would be awesome. Well, it is a series in May that we put together to kind of expand our knowledge with Microsoft Excel, because Microsoft Excel is a really great complement to any data source or future data analytical tools you might look into, like say Power Pivot or Power BI. And you can go to powerbi.com and download a free version of it just to kind of play around with it and see what it's all about. We're going to take a look today on how to conform and protect our data, and then use some tools, and I'm going to concentrate on mapping today for our presenting of our data. A couple of minor housekeeping ideas. My job is to keep your engagement up, and I ask for you to keep your distractions down. And those distractions I'm talking about are the ones that we all know are distractions. Cell phones, social media, emails, they'll all be there for you after class. But then we have to deal with distractions we cannot control, like if we're working from home, children's, pet, all those kinds of things. We understand that for sure. The class is only an hour, so I'll wrap it up, and I will make sure we have time for a Q&A. If you have any comments, go ahead and write them down, and then at the end, you can ask questions, and hopefully I can answer them for you. Before I start, I would like to introduce myself. As you know, my name is Mike. I work as a facilitator of training. I've been doing this a long time, and one day I decided, you know, that 20 years, that sounds good. I'll just leave it there, okay? My specialty is Microsoft, so anything from Windows to Azure to Excel to Power BI. And I also do essential skills. I live in St. Paul, Minnesota, a suburb right north of St. Paul, and I'm married with 3 daughters. All right. Mayanne also mentioned that today is the Data Analyst Fundamentals for Excel. So we're going to start at the very, very beginning on how to make sure that we set up the foundation. And whenever you're working with Excel, you should make sure that you're working with clean data. And I got about 3 or 4 slides that explain what clean data is. I'll run through those so that we understand we got to start from the basic. If you don't have a good foundation, then later on, it's not going to work as well. We're going to make sure we format our data correctly. I'll give you some tips on how to do that. And then I'll create some visual maps. Because I want to start here, the beginning, the basic is a really good place to start. And then if you stick with us through the 2 other classes, we'll end up in Power BI, making fantastic visuals that we can share with all our colleagues. So here's some concept. I know it sounds kind of basic, but we have to concentrate, like I said earlier, on that foundation. And we got to make sure that each column data is consistently formatted. That sometimes when we import data, append, we can get different data types within the same column. That causes issues. We should really try super hard to find our blank rows, our blank columns. We should not have blank rows or blank columns. Now, we can get by with blank cells, preferably not, but we can get by with blank cells. No filters are applied. We got to make sure we clear all our filters. And, you know, sometimes we're like, of course the filter's gone. But if you have record sets of 50,000 or 500,000, you might not realize the filter is on. And one spreadsheet in Microsoft Excel holds 1.4 million rows. So make sure your filters are off. There's no subtotals turned on. And there's no duplicates. Duplicates, duplicates, duplicates. That's what we want to guard against in our data. Well, actually, there's two things we always guard our data. Duplicates and garbage in, garbage out. So I'm going to convert our data into a table, and within your table tools, there's a tool to find duplicates, and then another tool called data validation helps us with duplicate or with garbage in, garbage out. So data validation. When we make visuals, reports, or dashboards, and remember, Excel might be just our data source for Power Pivot or Power BI. We got to have clean data as a foundation. That entails making sure that the source data, which is Excel, meets a certain criteria. So we optimize the end result. I know I've been training a long time and people just want to go to the end. You know, hey, just show me how to do that, because that's cool, you know. But data analytical people, data practitioners, spend 80% of the time in the data, 20% of the time in the visuals. So if you use clean data as a starting point and create your reports, you're not going to have as many problems, like for groupings, sortings. And again, taking time to properly ensure that your data is correct will make sure your results are accurate and effective. Clean data. Make sure that the first row has clearly described data in each column. What I'm talking about here is the headings. Don't use abbreviations. Don't use acronyms, because acronyms can really be confusing for other people within your company. Also, use everyday speak. Like, instead of saying extended price, say amount sold for a column header. Because again, we're going to be using tools like natural query language, and we got to make sure that the column headers are clearly labeled. Each column represents a unique data category, so it has to all be text, all be currency. Column names do not double as data items. That's happened. And each cell is formatted accurately based on its data type. And make sure that the number fields are formatted numbers so that we can do calculations and not text. So that's just some ideas to make sure that your data is correct to start with. So let's take a look so that we can make better visuals down the road. So I have a sample Excel spreadsheet, just sample data. I'm going to start off with this sheet right here. And for those of you taking notes, I just want to point this out. Under your home tab, way on the right in the editing group, there's this find and select. And there's a tool here called Go to Special. When you go to Special, here's where you can find all your blanks. So I will turn all blank columns, all blank rows, all blank cells into a dark gray format, so you can quickly scan your data to find blanks. Okay, so when you turn that on, nothing was blank in this data set. Make sure your column headers are everyday speak, no acronyms, no abbreviations. Just name it plainly, use spaces, and then format your data. If it's date, date. If it's currency or accounting, if it's numbers, it has to be numbers in order to do calculations. And if you're not going to do calculations on it, then it's text, right? Like a phone number. I doubt you'll, I gotta say I doubt because I did this once, but I doubt you'll ever download your database and find the average phone number and call it. And I gotta admit, years and years ago, I did that once. It's kind of a slow day, okay? So I thought I'd try that. Another big thing is this is a spreadsheet. We all know that. Accountants use spreadsheets. But if you're working with data, you put data into tables. If that's the one thing you get out of this hour, that's huge. You always put data into tables. All right? Because look at, this is a spreadsheet. And for example, if I want to insert a pivot table, it creates the pivot table off of a data set. And those dollar symbols mean that the range is locked in. So if you add more data, you better expand the range. But what you do, that's not a good practice. You click on your data, then you go to insert, and it's been sitting here for 20 years. Right below the insert tab is table. It finds your data range. It says, does your table have headers? And then you say, okay, that's a table. That's where you manage data. You have your own tab now to manage the table. Like any good data set, you can add total rows and automatically add measures to get a better idea of your data, to even analyze and understand your data even better. You can insert slicers. Slicers are interactive filters. You can find duplicates. You can name your table. Always name your table. No spaces when you name it. And now when I go to insert a pivot table, it's based on this table, and tables are dynamic. Dynamic, so that means when you add data, when you merge data, when you append data, when you import data, that table grows. It's dynamic. So best practice, put your data into tables. And I gotta show you slicers if you're new to tables. Slicers are interactive filters. So I think I'll filter on region and state a lot, because that's what I do. You know, you could figure that out. What do I filter on? Oh, probably region and state. So on my table design tools, I click on insert slicer, state. Now remember, there's gonna be 50 states, regions, say okay. And now I got these cool little tools that I can now format and interact with my data. So I can see exactly what we're doing in Connecticut or in Maine, New Jersey. Okay? So I'm going to hop over to another spreadsheet and my map data spreadsheet. That's just what I named this spreadsheet. And within the spreadsheet, I already have a table. Okay? And I want to see how many rows of data I have. So a really good keystroke is I'm selecting cell A1 and I use Control Shift down arrow. So right away, I know I've got 4,663 rows of data. So that keystroke was Control Shift down arrow. Another good keystroke is Control Home, H-O-M-E. Any PC, I'm only talking PCs today, any PC computer has a home key. So you can go to the very top of your data set, Control End, E-N-D, goes to the end of your data set. So with Control Home, Control N, Control Shift down arrow, Control Shift right arrow, I can select large amounts of data in seconds. Because if you don't know those keystrokes, you're selecting data like this. And that takes quite a while. All right. Hey, since this is a table, let me show you those slicers again. One more, just show you the slicers. So it's a table, therefore I got table design tab. Your contextual tabs are always on the right of your ribbon. I'll insert my slicers because I got a sneaking suspicion I'll be filtering by state and region. So I say okay, and now I've got all 4 regions, all 50 states. You can align them, you can resize them, and always keep a solid column or a solid row between your different objects. So if you're talking charts or slicers or tables, always keep a row or a column to separate it. They are taking up a lot of space, not that much, but I got to show you something cool. So let's just pretend they're taking up a lot of space. What you can do is when you're on a slicer, oh wow, I got slicer tools. And then I can change the amount of columns within the slicer. So see, the buttons are all vertical, but if I add 2 columns, now they're nice little buttons. Same thing with the state. I'm going to add a few columns there. I don't know how many, so I keep trying until they can't read them anymore. The little ellipses says, hey, too small. So now I've got a little smaller place for my states. I can see them more. And now I can say, hey, how are we doing in the Southeast? And now I'm only seeing Southeast states. And let's look at Florida. And there's everything I got in Florida. So now I can look at my table, and I've got all the records for Florida. So these are slicers, and then you can clear out your filters and interact with your data. So I know I've got clean data. I know that data has to go into a table in order to be more efficient and better down the road. And now I'm set to make some visuals. And today I'm going to just concentrate on a couple visuals, okay? Maps. Because we are selling in different states, and we can make different types of maps. So I do want to map out the states, but check this out. If I look at my data, I got them sorted by state, and I got Alaska. There must be like, I think 32 entries for Alaska. So I'm like, how am I going to do this? Well, a pivot table, there's only 2 things a pivot table does. Let's keep it simple, right? Only 2 things. Summarizes data, and you can query data. So summarizing, I could summarize all the sales in Alaska, Alabama, Arkansas, and the rest of the states. So that's summarizing. When I say query data, query is Latin for question. So that's when you ask a question of your data. How many sales do we have in Arkansas in November? and then you build a pivot table to answer that question. So I'm going to build a simple one to summarize it. So I'm on my table. I go to insert pivot table. It is based on a table. That's a default name. Not the best practice. Always name your tables. But I'm going with the default name of the table. We'll put it in a new worksheet. And I'll say, okay. So now a new worksheet went into my workbook. Over on the left is my pivot table. And over on the right are all the fields to answer the question or to summarize. And then you have 4 buckets. You can filter your data. Most pertinent information goes in the rows. Secondary information goes into columns. And whatever you aggregate goes into the values. And you might say, Mike, yours looks different than when I see my pivot tables, because there's a little gear here. Just point this out. Default, this is what it looks like by default. But for whatever reason, I like the gear. I go to the gear. I like the second option. I just like that better. So my pivot table, I want to show each state and the sales. So there we go. Now see, I got Alaska is at sales. I can't even read that darn number, it's so big. Colorado, great state of Minnesota. And I'm only having distinct counts. So I got all 50 states. And now I can make a map. I do not need this pane over here anymore. So when you don't need your panes, exit out of there, close it down. I should format these numbers so that I can read them better. And they are currency. So I'm going to go to home. And under my general drop down, accounting. If you ever want to know the difference between accounting and currency, here we go. Because they never show you the difference. And I always think of it this way. Accountants want everything lined up perfect. So the dollar symbol is way over on the left. Everything's lined up perfect. No matter how you align your numbers, they are lined up perfectly. Because that's what accountants do, right? Currency, I like to use currency to save space. Because everything, the dollar symbol and everything is right next to the value. And how you align it, sometimes the decimal points aren't lined up perfectly, but I use currency to save space. So I'll switch that. It adds the commas, so now I can read my numbers better. I'll zoom in a little bit. There we go. And I don't need the decimal points. So I'm going to round, and the decimal points will be decreased, and the rounding is automatic and correct. Okay? Excel would not give us incorrect rounding. So now if I select my data, I'm going to go ahead and make a map. Whoa, I got to control my mouse a little better. Let me try that one more method. I'm not doing my control shift down arrow because of that total. I don't want the total in my map. So I'm just selecting the 50 states. I know I have 50 selected because I look at my status bar. It says, Mike, you have 50 selected. Good. Now I go to insert. And in my chart groups, we do have a map. And it's called the fill map. So I click on it and I get a warning. It's an informational warning. It's like, hey, come on, you cannot make this type of a chart with a pivot table. You can't do that. But you could just copy the data, take it outside of the pivot table, and then make your chart that way. So if you read that little information box. That's what it tells me. It's amazing what happens when you read. So therefore, I'll just copy my data, put it in D4. So see, I got a good column separating it. Just paste it. Now I'll make my map. And see, now I have a map that shows the states, and the darker colors are more sales, so it's a fill map. And of course, I can change my title. So this will be total sales 2020, so last year's sales. The highest is 770,000, the lowest is 91. So it has my legend. I can make it bigger, the map that is. And guess what? Here's another good tip. I've been training, like I mentioned, for a very long time, and I've made it my own personal mission to get people from stop hiding columns out of convenience. You know, if columns are in your way, people right click and hide them for convenience. Well, that causes issues. I guarantee it. Sooner or later, you're going to have an issue with that. Because the word itself is hide. You hide very confidential information. That's what you use it for. But out of convenience, you group. So you select the columns you normally would hide, but let's not do that anymore. So you select A and B in this case. Then I go to my data tab. And in your data ribbon, it's always way on the right. This command has been sitting here again for 20 years. You group the data. That adds a little pane with an expand and collapse. And now your colleagues aren't, you know, if you get that promotion and you leave the company or you get moved upstairs and people are left with your work, they're not wondering, hey, is there hidden columns in here or hidden rows? No, they'll see this plus and minus. So group unwanted columns when you're trying to hide them for convenience. Group them. It's much easier and much better when you're doing other functions down the road, like vertical lookups. All right, now I'm going to go to the plus on my chart because I want to add data labels. So look at the default data label is always the dollar amount. Gets pretty darn busy there. So when you're on the little chart elements icon, the little plus, you can click on the black diamond to fine tune it. So what, none or show or more data options, data label options. So what I'm going to do is maybe just put the category name on. So see, it tells the states. And you know what, I'm okay with just the states because when I hover over, I've got the tooltip. So it tells me how much sales per state. Also, I've got the table right over here. But let's see what else we can do. So I'm going to go back to my data label, click on the more options. Because one thing that people miss, I know I do, is this first option way up here. It says label options. And my series 1 data is the states. But look at when I go to series 1, it says, hey, what map projection do you need? Mercator, Miller, or Ambers? Now, if you watch, it just switches the map just a little bit. So it makes it more kind of oval. These 3 words in here are words of individuals that created different ways to lay maps out. with longitude and latitude. So I'm not going to get too much detail into that because we get into the weeds on that one. But I always go with that Mercator. Then the map area. What do you want to map? I could map the entire world. So see, that's the entire world. But then it also has different options like country and region, or the first one, only regions with data. But be careful with that, because if you don't have any data, you might be not seeing part of your data set. So side, probably the top two. And then the labels. That's fit. So now these labels are actually the state names. Or none. I'll just keep it like that. So now I've got a nice map that shows their sales, and it's a fill map. And again, with my tooltip, I can hover over, I can see exactly what we're doing in Illinois, Washington, and of course, if the numbers change, so does the map. If the numbers change, so does the map. Okay, so always name your spreadsheet. So it's no longer sheet 1. I'm going to rename it sales 2020 fill map. So that's one map if you're trying to map geographical data. So yes, I'm using sales because that's what I know. But you could be using incidences or calls or corona cases. I mean, we've all seen this in the paper and in the media, right? That's exactly how they create something, like a map that shows how different states are affected by the pandemic. So whatever data set you have, if it's geographical, take a look at making a fill map. But here's another type of map that I think is just totally awesome. And I'm going to click on my table, and I'm going to go to insert, because under insert is all my charts and stuff, right? But check this out. You can make a 3D map. And when I click on a 3D map, you open up 3D maps. It's a separate app in the back of Excel. So separate app opened up. Actually, it opened up on my other monitor. So let's get that over here. And now I can make a 3D map. And you won't believe what we can all do with this. This is just awesome. This is awesome. So let's see what we got here. First of all, we have our file tab where we have options and close. We have undo and redo, thank goodness. We have a ribbon, but only one, so our options are really narrowed. You make different tours, that's what they're called, tours. So if you want to compare different things, I just want to compare sales per state in 2020. So that's what the tour, I'm going to name the tour here pretty soon. Then you have your 3D map, and when you're 3D, see, I can rotate it. So if you do international business, we could zoom right into Ireland. And if anybody in the room is interested, I'm not sure if you are, but my family comes from right in here. But anyway, you can zoom in and zoom out. We're going to put labels on it too. So let me get back to the United States. I sure hope I'm not making anybody dizzy. That is not my intent. Okay. So I'll zoom in, or actually out. So right now it just says, hey, Mike, we've got some states with little squares in them. Because over on the pane on the right, is where I have the first layer of data. It's called layer 1. There's a little pencil. I'm going to rename this because layer 1 means nothing to me. This is sales 2020. And now I can look at my data. Notice that it's a column charts. They already figured out, since you're using a map, we're putting a state field in from our data set. We can do the height of the column. So that would be the sales, categories, and time. Huh. So height, let's look at total sales. So see, the bigger the bar, the more sales. But I don't know if that's the best way to portray this. What else do I got up here? I can do a cluster column. That would be if I had a category, right? So if I added a category, heat map. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not a heat map. That's a bubble chart. Bigger the bubble, the bigger the sales. But we have so many sales out east, can't even see the states. How about a heat map? Ooh, that could be. And then finally, the fill. Now I'm going to go with the fill for a reason. Because with the fill, I'll just look down here. I can do a state compared to the sales, but then I can also compare it with time. And with time, I'm going to add a field with time, and I'm going to go month. Okay, now wait a minute. Since I did month, I got a little player down here now, like a media player with a go. So I'll play and watch. I can see the date thing up in the upper left-hand corner. So in June, July, September, October, December. So you can see how your data plays out over time that's based on your data set. Now everything's going a little fast for me. So what I'm going to do is the little timer, I'm going to move that to the right. And maybe make it a little wider and a little longer. There we go. I'm also going to adjust my map so that I can rotate it, and also we're not seeing Alaska. Okay, so maybe zoom out a little bit. Now I can see Alaska. I can see that my time. I'll move the legend, maybe make that smaller too. And then the player has a gear. And when you click on the gear, you can slow everything down. So I'm going to slow it down the duration. I can also add different effects, how it fills. Does it circle in? Does it fly over? Does it push in? There are minor changes, but it does affect it. I'm going to use push in. Start date, start time. So if you want to narrow it down to just a quarter, you sure could. And then again, the speed. So I'm going to lower the speed a little bit. There we go. Now play it. And see, now I can see it better. Now I'm not worried about the time, but here's what we did in January. Here's what we did in February. I'm thinking it might be a little bit too slow, but you just keep adjusting it until you get the right speed that you want. And again, that's the gear. And you can either speed it up or slow it down. So once you get the right speed, I won't waste your time getting it perfect, but I would get it perfect. Just so you know, on your ribbon, you can change the type of map. So if you want a flat map or not, you can rotate it. There will be tools in the lower right so that your colleagues can play with it too and rotate it around and see different parts of the world. You can add different themes. So there's a theme. So if you like the black or the blue, the high intensity, I'll keep it this color. And now this is a 3D map. And I can close down my panes because I don't need them anymore. Now I've got much more room. And I've got my controls to play, pause, and see how our sales do over a period of time. So a 3D map. And when you get all done, you go to File, Close. When I save my work and close down Excel, the next time I open it up, a little white box will pop up and say, hey, you have a 3D map in here. Because see, it's not a map on a spreadsheet. It will have a little white box that says you have a 3D map. So then you have to go to Insert 3D Maps. Open your 3D maps because it's built in the background of Excel. And then you watch the tour that you just created. Because you could have multiple tours. And when you click on that tour, then the map opens up and you can play it. But one last thing, and then I'll do a wrap up. One last thing. When you make a 3D map and you get it perfect, oh my goodness. I can go to my home tab and right underneath the home tab, make a video. It's like, what? So you click on create a video, and do you want it for high def televisions or for presenting or just for computers so people can just see it on their computers or their tablets? So this is the quality of the video. So do you want a really high quality, like HD quality, or very, maybe 720 pixels or 360? So I'll go to the middle of the road. I'm going to create a video. I got to give it a name. Sales 2020 vid. Put it on my desktop just for convenience and save it. So now it creates a video. Doesn't take too long to create it. But now you can either share that MP4 file with anybody you want, right? Or you can embed it into, say, a PowerPoint. So I'm going to end my PowerPoint show for right now so I can show you my presentation that I'm used for the class. And you can go and, let's see, I'll do it right here. Insert a slide. Let me see how, it's almost done, come on. I should have did poor quality, just so it would have went quicker, because high def would take a little longer, but it's almost done. Then I'll wrap up and do a Q&A, so we've got plenty of time. Boom, it's done. So now I'll close out that dialog box in Excel, go back to my PowerPoint. I put a blank slide in, right? And I'm going to insert, way over on the right, a video from this device. And now, using PowerPoint, I can insert this video. It is not linked, just to make sure everybody understands that it's not linked. But then I can pick a nice design, put a title in, and then when I'm presenting, I can explain to the audience how our sales went last year, because our sales really took place out east. And then I think it was right around the second quarter that we started to spread into, and then, you know, you go on and on. But look at this. You have a nice little video that you can now show your audience and run it any way you want. And that's how you make a video out of your 3D map. And remember, the goal of this series, the goal is to end up making reports like this in Power BI, where I have the same kind of tools. So this is Power BI. BI stands for business intelligence. And we're going to import our Excel spreadsheets into Power BI in the next couple series. And I have tools that I can play and see over time how our data grows and how our sales go over time. And I can share this. I can make little apps. And Power BI is just amazing. But if you don't start with the basics in Excel, it's going to cause issues when you get into tools like Power BI or even Power Pivot. So I know that's a lot of data, a lot of information, but it is recorded. And remember, our courses are just to kind of give you a taste of what we do in our real life classrooms. And we go over tools like this, but think about it, our classes are either a half a day or a full day, and all the information that you can get in a full day of training, as opposed to just a quick 45 minutes. So what I wanted to share with you today, though, was concentrate on that base. Make sure you're working with clean data. 80% in the data, 20% in the visuals. Make sure you format it correctly and keep an eye on it to make sure it's formatted when other people are adding data or you're appending or importing, and put your data in the tables. And then I showed you how to make a fill map and a 3D map, which are both tools in Microsoft Excel. So I'm going to hand it back over to Mayan, and Mayan, take it away.
Awesome, wonderful. Thank you so much, Mike. Just a reminder for everyone, if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in that questions menu option, and we'll get to those in just a few minutes. So we'll give everyone a little time there to type those in. Again, if you have any questions or if you are interested in the material that Mike just presented on the webinar, please contact your local center for more information. You can do a quick zip code search for the center nearest you on newhorizons.com. And also, you know, the session is being recorded, so be on the lookout again for the recording link later today. A quick reminder that this is part 1 in a 3-part series. So if you haven't already, go to newhorizons.com and go onto our webinar schedule and make sure to register for the next part, which Mike is also presenting. I believe that's in a couple weeks here. So go ahead and do that, and don't forget to do that before your day's end. We do have a couple questions here, Mike. Some of them are very, you know, basic, but again, anybody with other questions, please feel free to type those in. The first question is, what version of Excel were you using here to do the demo?
Oh, that's a very good question. And the version I'm using is 365. But with that said, everything that I went over is in 2016, 2019, 365. So I am using kind of the latest, greatest, but I made sure that everything that I went over is in earlier versions. Absolutely.
Awesome. And in regards to this demo here that you have, is there a way to map by countries in a counties, I'm sorry, counties in a specific state?
Yes, if you have that data, if I had the data that I broke it down all the way to counties, the map would take, the 3D map would take place for drilling down to counties and cities. But something like that, Power BI is just crazy good on breaking down into geography. And let me just show you super quick how easy it is. And remember, you can get a free version of this. So I just imported a spreadsheet into Power BI, and then click on city, county. Come on. Oh, that's country. No, that's county. Region, state, and then I can make a map out of this data. So the answer is yes, you could do it on a global map in Excel, but something breaking down like that, I would go ahead and use Power BI. And then I can make a really good map, really nice map with my geography. And I could break it down. Okay, so that's what I would do for that one.
Wonderful. Those were actually the two questions that came in. You did such a great job, Mike, as always, presenting the information here in Excel. One of our, resident experts here. But again, thank you everyone for joining us. As always, Mike, thank you for presenting on behalf of New Horizons. We appreciate it. Don't forget to sign up for part 2 with Mike coming up in a few weeks here. And with that being said, everyone, the webinar is now concluded. You may now log off. Thank you and have a good one.